Before the video begins, make sure you subscribe, as only a small percentage of the people who watch my channel are actually subbed. It's free, and you can cancel it at any time if you want. Enjoy the video. So I've had this idea for a while, but today we're going to be ranking all of the crossovers, pretty much going through whether or not it's just a crossover skin that simply exists and is just basically a different look for the character while keeping all the same SIGs, all the way up to where it's literally just better than the original. And there are quite a few. So yeah, let's see. So we're going to go down the row, and first up is Heat Blast. Now Heat Blast, already, I didn't say I would look too much at the weapons, but the guns are literally just fireballs, and that's part of the character, so I feel like I have to look at that specifically given the nature of it. But also the SIGs themselves, not only do they have a different like sound effect, but they also just look different, and I think can be deceiving at times. Not to mention that it actually does have like some weird sound effects. Like I know in Spear especially, the SIGs are like practically silent, if I'm not wrong, right? Maybe someone in chat can confirm that for me, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that is part of it. Xavier Woods is literally, again, he's the second character we're going through, and he's also just flat out unfair. Xavier on the end SIG for Bodvar Hammer, the pancakes, it doesn't make sense on both. Literally all the SIGs don't make sense. The SIG sound effects last way too long. The animations for both the end SIGs are very deceiving and very minimal, which is very hurtful to your opponent because it can really mess you up badly if you're not paying attention. So Barbara is one, this is the first one where I'm not too sure. Barbara does have a few different sound effects, but I would have to say that I want to put Barbara in slightly better because the SIGs do sound different, but I know deep down I can't, because in reality, the SIG sound effect change isn't that big of a difference, and simply all that Barbara has is a color change. Okay, and again, as you can see, there's quite a trend with crossovers that they're almost guaranteed to be at least slightly better than most, and Diamond Head is no exception. Diamond Head is absolutely insane when it comes to the Caspian signatures on both. I think Katars specifically, though, are really, really wild because it makes certain SIGs look very, very deceiving. Again, like the other Rayman crossover Barbara, I'm not too sure about Glowblocks. I honestly think Glowblocks is probably, he's not different enough to be completely unfair, but I do think he is slightly better. The SIG sound effects and the changes like to the coloring actually can be pretty hard, and if you've never played up against the Glowblocks before, the look can be deceiving of him because he's shaped, dude, he's shaped like a bowling pin. That doesn't help anyone either. So Hellboy, actually, I think is just a colors change. I consulted the chat, and that's kind of what we have agreed to. Now, keep in mind also that I'm not going to be ordering these in any order. I mean, if they're up here in the unfair, like, they're just unfair. You can't really rank them overall. I feel like that's a little too much, and it doesn't make much sense to, so just note that going forward. Okay, now Lara Croft does have some different SIG changes. The sound effects are also different, as well as the colors. I think this makes Lara Croft possibly slightly better than Diana, although I do think it could just basically be a color swap as well. It's kind of up to you what you think of that. I don't think there's a huge advantage with Lara Croft, and obviously both the like skins are the same. However, I like the long-haired one more. That's just me. I don't know about you guys, but yeah. Okay, so I had to actually go in training room to figure this one out. Nimue at first I thought would simply be just a color change, but after checking Nimue out in training room, Nimue's actually like very slightly better than Dusk. The sound effects are very quiet, which is a big part of giving a character an advantage, because if you can't hear anything, then that's so big, because then your opponent's not really going to know what you're throwing out. Also, the hitboxes can be a little deceiving because the effects are like, they're really cool, but they're also like slightly bigger than Dusk. So Enchantress is one, I've kind of knew beforehand where I was going to put Enchantress, and I'd have to say, Fate's already a freak. Fate's already so broken. So you can't really become like super unfair for Fate, but however, the sound effects are the main thing. The actual animation changes aren't that big of a deal. Like, you get to ride a cape instead of a star. That doesn't really matter. However, the sound effects, again, like I said earlier, are the one to focus on, I think, more than anything. And the sound effects on Enchantress are actually slightly better than Fate's in the fact that they are quieter and might deceive people a little bit. Becky Lynch not only has different sound effects and different coloring, but the side sig on Spear is it doesn't even make sense how big it is. I mean, the rest of the like animations do match up quite nicely. However, the mere fact that the side sig alone is a giant fist doesn't make any sense, and I think that alone, with quiet sounds, is enough to put Becky definitely in unfair. Just like Becky, guys, I gotta give Shovel Knight unfair. I mean, his sigs are super quiet. They're very subtle. The blue can be hard to see sometimes, at least for me, I think. But it's almost like Nash if the sigs were blue. However, we're very quiet, and we're kind of hard to see sometimes. So John Cena isn't really a skin I use too much. However, now that I've seen exactly what I think makes him better than Hattori, I have to give John Cena probably up in unfair. I have to put him up there because the Ensig on his sword and spear, not only do they have effects that last after the fact, they're very minimal, and also they're very quiet. And I think the sound is kind of off, so it's super, super hard to tell like when it actually is over. Most of you have probably seen or faced a Finn once in your life of playing Brawl, and all I can say is this character is literally a better Jala. There's nothing else to say. The sigs are minimal, they're quiet, they're like a very light blue, and it makes it super hard to see. It's a no-brainer putting him in unfair. Again, another skin that I personally have played with a lot, and I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of too. For me, another no-brainer. Pearl's just not right. Pearl is a better Kaya. The sigs can be super hard to see. They're very subtle. Some are unreactable, and I don't think they like represent the original character sigs very well. So the hitboxing doesn't match up well. And if you're looking to just have literally a better Kaya, in my opinion, you should be playing Pearl. Forearms is an interesting one because Forearms actually has pretty good like animation, and the sounds match very, very well. I think as he is one of the newer crossovers, they did a better job this time around, like making him not just blatantly better than the original. However, there is one sig in particular that is better, and that is his Hammer D sig. And for me, that's not enough to make him unfair, but I would have to say that he is slightly better because in his D sig, he goes from forearms to cannonball, which that whole like process might just throw you off, and I think that is just what makes him slightly better. Also, another thing to note about forearms is the fact that the model doesn't really line up with the original like hitboxing that the all the other legends have. He is slightly taller, and also he has those 2 extra arms that are always flexing for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, he's like that, and that also is a factor into why he is slightly better. All right, now this Tic Tac looking guy, it's easy enough. Unfair. I mean, like forearms, the model just is not lining up. He's like smaller than everything else. Like this guy's straight up a bean. Not to mention some of the signatures on gauntlets and on hammer are just crazy. They don't make sense, and it can be very hard to tell. Like they're so low key when they come out, it's very hard to tell when they actually are out. So I double checked with Princess Bubblegum because I wasn't sure if there really was that much of an advantage. However, I gotta say, I think there is a slight one because the unicorn that comes with like some of the SIGs can be deceiving, and it can mess with you. I think the sound is pretty alright on most of them. Blaster N SIG can be hard to hear, I guess, a little bit, or might deceive you, but I think overall, there's not really much of a benefit you're going to be getting out of using Princess Bubblegum. Alright, so this Chester, the Cheeto looking guy, it hurts my soul as someone who likes Mordex a lot in design, and, you know, I've played Mordex a lot, but I think Daimyo has to be in the unfair. The sound cues and the visual cues for mainly gauntlets, but on Scythe too, are just way quieter and way more subtle. And I mean that's just better than Mordex. Like Mordex at least has like some ice charging on his fingertips, whereas this guy, I mean, just gives you a little like blast of Cheeto dust, and that's all you get to see. So these next two I think are pretty easy to answer. They're both just color swaps. You go from purple to like this red on Spectre Knight, and then on Black Knight, all that you go from is you go from the blue to a like reddish, I believe. It's kind of a darker red. It's hard to say what color exactly it is, but it does have some animation changes, whereas the Nyx swap, Spectre Knight, doesn't have anything different, but I don't think it's very notable to where it's going to give you any sort of advantage. It just looks different. This marshmallow head looking girl, absolutely unfair. I mean, what else is there to say about the character? I think a lot of the crossovers from Steven's universe are very not right in how they're made. I mean, this character, you literally go invisible for one of the SIGs. On D-SIG on Gauntlets, literally no Q. It's like Petra. Petra SIGs at a base level, already crazy. But when you take away like a lot of the visual cues and some of the, honestly, audio cues too, it makes for such a nightmare to deal with. Garnet's Orb kind of has the same thing going on where visually the SIGs are quite different and can be quite deceiving. I don't think the sound is different as well, but I don't think that's the main problem here. I just think overall, visually, that's where this character has such an advantage over Petra. Now, I've played actually quite a bit of Asuka. I think Asuka actually is just a color swap. Not too much else to say. I mean, I just like how the colors look compared to Nai's. There are a little bit of changes with like animations on the spear SIGs mainly, but again, it's nothing that's really inherently an advantage. And I think there's like slight changes to the sound as well, but again, not enough to where you're going to notice. So Rock has two things going for him. Not only are his SIGs absolutely like non-existent in sound, but some of the animations on just a few of them, I believe side SIG on guitars and then like D-SIG on hammer, both have zero animation. They just don't exist until the move's like actually thrown out, and by that point it's too late. So it's pretty big upgrade from Sentinel in my opinion. Again, a common theme that seems to be going on for the Shovel Knight characters, aside from Shovel Knight himself, is that he's just a color swap. There is some sound changes. I believe only a sound change on the Ensig on Lance because it's like a Phoenix instead. But again, the main thing is that exists and it's not giving you any sort of advantage. So aside from that, he's just a color swap. Okay, and this is where we run into the first crossover where it doesn't make sense to me why they put him in this state. He's just like some boar that literally has tarot SIGs. I mean, he's literally a meme in the community. I don't understand the thought process, but he just exists. Gruagok, I think that's how you say the name. I don't care at all. Who cares about this character, period? I don't know, but yeah, he's just there. Roman Reigns, like most of the other wrestling characters, I gotta say, because these SIGs are just that much quieter, and some show like no animation in the charge time, and there's no sound in the charge time, or at least it's very subtle sound, I think it's just a way better Taros, and that definitely puts him in the unfair category. Now for Undertaker, I kind of went a bit back and forth because I wasn't too sure if I consider him just to be slightly better or actually unfair. Because here's the thing with Undertaker. Undertaker, across the board, has considerably quieter SIGs than Thor. And also, another thing to look at is the fact that the visuals are slightly less. There's less there. And that's not saying too much because you can still see them clearly. I feel like just because it applies to every SIG, though, on Undertaker, he's just that much better of a version of Thor, in my opinion. And I think I have to put him in the unfair category. All right, so Macho Man, a no-brainer character. He's unfair. Macho Man not only has visuals that don't represent the SIGs very well, especially on Lance. I think that the Axe SIGs have visuals that are like much more subtle. And then I think the sound as well can maybe mess with you a little bit. But I think he's the character where the visuals are actually like very, very impactful and can be really, really deceiving at times. And just as I'm talking about visuals that can deceive you, this is Val crossover, right? Stevani. The side SIG on Gauntlets literally makes you go invisible. And I mean, that alone is enough. But not only that, the sound effects on a lot of the signatures, especially on Sword, the sounds linger for some reason for so long. Like, I don't know why they felt the need to make them linger that long. There's kind of like zero reason for that. But this is, again, another no-brainer. Stevani is way better Val, flat out unfair. And this one hurts me a bit because I like this skin so much, and yet there is no change for it. I remember when I bought this skin, and I didn't even realize that this was a crossover. This was like the very first crossover they did, I'm pretty sure, which is Ranover from Rivals of Aether. And it's just, it exists. There's nothing changed, just like Gruagok. And yeah, there he is. This one didn't take too much time to really think about. I think given the fact alone that like side SIG on Axe, she literally turns into like She-Hulk. It doesn't make much sense to me, the choice that they went with this character, the route that they went. A lot of the visuals are much more subtle. And the sounds, I don't think the sounds are really what makes this character broken. If you've played against this character, if you've played this character, you know exactly why I'm putting this in the unfair. Plague Knight is interesting. As I said, a lot of these crossovers for Shovel Knight are just color swaps, but Plague Knight actually, I think, is slightly better. I don't think he's good enough to be unfair like Diamond Head, because the visuals actually represent Caspian pretty well. Like, he's still throwing out bombs and stuff. He's not throwing out, like, shards of diamonds at you, right? It's still bombs, but the sounds are different and the visuals are different. So that exists, and I think that has to put him at least slightly above Caspian, although he is not that much better to where he is, like, Diamond Head level. And last but not least, we have Rayman. I mean, Rayman's his own character, so I can't really put him in any of these tiers. But yeah, he exists, and I guess I can't really put him back down here. All right, so that's all, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.